Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today our guest is Mark Matthews, who is the author of Callie's Web, which we will be talking about today. And I'm going to let him introduce himself now. So take it away.
Thanks, Anita. Yeah, Mark Matthews, and happy to be here today. Thank you to Crystal Lake and Anita. Let's see, I'm the author of a handful of novels, Milk Blood, All Smoke Rises, Hobgoblin of Little Minds, To Those Willing to Drown, and also done some anthology editing and publishing. And Callie's Web is, a few of my works have been published by a small, mid-level publisher, let's say, and I am very excited for Callie's Web to be released. It's we're recording this a few days before release date. My day job is a social worker, and I think I tap into some of that material when I write. I know I do, and also some other personal experiences. Let's see, 2 kids. I take life seriously, but don't take myself too seriously. And active member of the Horror Writers Association. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Mental Health Initiative, which aims to help destigmatize the way mental health is portrayed in fiction, and also like writer mental health. And we usually have a panel or two at StokerCon, and we have a weekly newsletter. In the holistic HWA newsletter, there's an article that we write, and those kind of things. So, anyways, that's me.
Yeah, we recently did a podcast episode on mental health and writing. Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
so that's always a interesting topic. So give everybody an overview of your novel, Callie's Web.
Callie's Web is it's told in alternating points of view, first person point of view, which is kind of neat. Both the characters. One is a trying to stay in recovery from a heroin addiction young woman who is on parole, who had some extreme trauma growing up. Her name is Callie Cook, thus Callie. There is no spider other than in her dreams. A spider appears above her bed. It's a recurring dream, and the spider has syringes and it stabs her, and it reoccurs, and it might come out of her dreams at the end. And then her parole officer, who is very rigid, very binary, follow the law or else. And he has his own issues, his own history of trauma that makes him rigid like that. And so they kind of have a duel. She goes on the run, he chases her, and bedlam.
Yeah, that's the best kind of horror novels with this bedlam. So, what were the inspirations for what were your inspirations for writing this book?
Well, I think I coined it as if Cronenberg rewrote Train Spotting within the universe of Les Mis while reading Charlotte's Web to his daughter. So you don't need to know Les Mis to understand them. It's really a novella, about 105, 110 pages, so you can read it in a couple of sittings. You don't need to know the story of Les Mis, but I use that as kind of, it's a story that's been told many times. In Andor, they call that Les Mis in Space. It's that Disney Star Wars series. The Fugitive, about a very obsessed binary parole agent chasing this fugitive who isn't as guilty as he likes to believe. Probably has some reasons for committing their crime. So I kind of thought, let's do that modern day. Let's make the person being chased a heroin addict struggling through life. And then I said, let's make the person chasing her have some reasons why he's so rigid and why he's so binary with the law. When I say binary, I mean, you follow law or you don't. There's no excuse. We learn in the novel that he's got some supernatural reasons why he has to be like that. So it's a tough duel. So it's pretty dark. It's pretty fun. It's the song "The Twilight Zone" is what I liken it to. Everything I've written, I think of a song as much for the tone of the book, and that song with the kind of the madness and is what I think fits this book. And I'm super excited about it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the main characters. What kind of an emotional journey do they go on?
Well, Kelly Cook is probably the main character. That Mr. Garrick is the secondary main. But I mean, the story starts with her losing her mom through addiction, and her sister is her caretaker, and then she loses her sister, and so she promises to take care of her sister's daughter. Um, but because she's in jail, that prevents her from going because of the parole. She can't do everything she wants to do. So she has to fulfill that promise, but break the law and become a fugitive to do so. And so she has to fight off these internal and external monsters. She goes on the run, and there's something kind of monstrous along with her for the ride. So because of her bitterness, she takes a step she didn't need to, and that causes more baggage for her. And then she also has this reoccurring nightmares that she has to battle that kind of reflect her own desire to use heroin and say, can we swear here? I just won't. F it. I'm not going to bother with my promises. I'm just going to, shoot some heroin and live in that dream world. And throughout the book, heroin's calling to her saying, come on, just come back to me. Everything will be okay. Forget about your problems. You love me and you can't get away. So that's her journey. And the web is Kellyanna's web. Kelly's web is both the web that's trying to get her and ultimately the web that she uses to protect the children in her life, without spoiling it too much.
So, yeah, there is a dark psychological aspect to this book. You're dealing with addiction. So, why and how did you want to explore that?
Well, it's in almost every single one of my books. I'm in recovery myself from addiction. It's just what comes out. I think I've gotten away without repeating myself too bad because there's always a unique take to the addiction, and sometimes it's not the main issue. But when I write horror, I just write and horror comes out. I don't think I'm going to write horror today. I just write, and so when I write and those kind of things come out, what I've experienced just comes natural to me. It doesn't mean I haven't written outside of my experience. I have, but that layer, I think, is something that I want to say I'm attracted to, but I can really tap into my dark side. Always has addiction in it and all sorts of other things. So it just always comes out.
Mm.
um,
Yeah, well, there is a little bit of a fascination, I think, with exploring some of the darker aspects of human nature when you're a writer as well. So,
Such as horror, right?
yeah.
But I like the expression we write. We don't write darkness. We write candles. you know.
Yeah. So, are there any secondary characters that stood out for you, became a bit of a favorite?
Um, well, the parole officer himself, the parole agent, um, Agent Garrett, he might be his primary too, but he's maybe more secondary. He There's some sympathy. For first, you kind of hate him, but then you realize what he's been living with, and you still think but he ultimately becomes someone is tragic yet sympathetic. And I'm trying not to give up the ending, but his ending where he ends up with his quasi redemption, because he might be happy where he ended, but none of us would be, is one of my favorite endings I've ever written of anybody ever. And so I'll leave it at that. So his arc in some way is more interesting, actually, I think. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very intriguing too, what you just said. We need to know now.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
No, I want.
what's your favorite scene without giving spoilers in the book?
Um, when this chase happens, it all culminates in a drug house, basically, and it's just madness in there. Like, and the two see each other, and um, all the supernatural events collide. There's like a sort of a creature in there that I don't want to reveal it, because another cool scene is when you realize somebody is not as they seem. Um, and that explodes. It ends up in the basement, and things come up from the sewer, kind of. it probably sounds a little more monstery than it really is, because it's more almost like magical realism, like all this stuff happening. I think it's my favorite because if you've ever been into a drug house, it's what it feels like. It might not be all reality, but it's what reality feels like, the madness and the maelstrom, and so many psyches in one place, and dark psyches, and so much going on, and so much you have to worry about who's a threat and who isn't. And with everybody in their own, high little world. So it really gets, and that's where the Twilight Zone comes in, that song. I think when it ends, the beat of that song, the tone, um, really fits. So that was my favorite for sure. I mean, there's a lot of cool scenes in it, but that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like you use the supernatural aspects as a bit of a metaphor for the reality of things.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So, did you find anything challenging about writing the book? Did any scenes or characters give you trouble?
Um, the writing two characters side by side and making the time of the plot lock. So, because sometimes like a next chapter would start, but I wanted it to start like in time, not right at the same time that the other chapter ended. So I had to drop clues like this is where they're at right now, and then they're catching up. I think I changed a couple of the chapter headings, working with Ken from Crystal Lake Toward Waters, to make sure it's a little more clear, but to always direct the reader, and just to get in those mindset of the two characters, the two opposing characters, and everybody wants to be the hero of their own story. So I needed to, when I was in that character's chapter, um, make sure my decisions and thoughts made sense to myself at the time, because to that person they did. So, but I like using multiple points of view in multiple characters' points of view in novels. I rarely do I write from just one, and I think that really can add to the tension when two people don't know what each other are doing, but the reader does, and they're about to collide. So
Yeah, yeah, I've written a couple of multiple person books too. And yes, those chapter headings do come in handy when you're messing with the timelines.
yeah, some sort of directive to orientate the reader so that they don't have to work too hard to make sense of it all, because they shouldn't. So
Yeah. So, is there a facet of writing fiction that's tricky for you in general?
um, I have a hard time plotting sometimes, because I'm more of a pantser. Like and so I'll write and I'll have an idea of where it's going, but then I'll get stuck about what's next, or more than likely I'll write a bunch of pages and then realize I wanted to go somewhere else, and so all these pages are wasted. So, but it's okay, because I got to where I wanted to go, but I end up, um, I probably written 250 words for this novella, which is on being 110 pages or 250 pages, but it's actually 110 pages, because a lot of off ramps that I just had to take, and then to kill my darlings, you have to make sure to pare it down nicely, and let go of those. Then you find they can be useful in other times. You use that chunk of story from another thing. So yeah, not much of a plotter. I've tried that. But answer I still struggle with. I want to adapt a film one day, because the plot's already there for you, but it's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I know
novel.
I know a lot of pantsers, and they all say the same thing. It's like we have to go back and fix everything. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
but it's fun when it works out. Uh huh.
yeah. So, what do you enjoy most about? Oh, sorry. What is your favorite aspect of being a writer?
There's all sorts of cliches. I like um, being able just to go places um, in fiction, that the idea of don't be afraid to go there. And so when I do that and I do it well, I love it. And I love when other writers do it themselves, because fiction should be dangerous or nothing at all. I like that expression. Um, and without it, I would have I my job is pretty important, but it's not always self-expression, and there's something transgressive about it too. It's a way to get outside of standard normal society and write something bizarre but meaningful. And it's like my way of getting a nose tattoo, I guess. I'm going to be transgressive in my fiction, and just write some weird shit. And that's why it's cool that Torrid Waters exists, because I think they're more supportive of some of the more weirder stuff. And I wouldn't call this bizarro, or even extreme, but it is a little bizarre.
Hey, so what do you enjoy most about the horror genre?
um, well, I mean, I grew up with horror. My late brother got me into horror, and I just um, the characters on the screen or the page, I felt for them because I am them. I try to explain I don't write horror to scare others. I write because I'm the one that's scared. And when I saw these characters terrified everywhere they looked and no one to help them and they felt alone, I'm like, that's me. So writing that writing that is how I feel. And I don't think any other genres can capture that feeling as much, or when they do capture it, it's because they're using some bits of horror often. Um, there's some that's just fun. I'm watching the Addams Family season 2 right now, or Wednesday, it's called, right?
Mhm.
And there's some themes in there that are important, but it's just fun and transgressive, and no other genre. I mean, other genres can in their own way. Speculative fiction does, but horror does it best for me, I think.
So have you written in any other genres?
My first novel, I wouldn't say was horror. It's called Stray. Um, but the funnest parts of that were the dark parts that were definitely horror-ish. And I didn't think that novel was dark, but other people thought it was. And I said, well, you think that's dark? Let's make it darker. So, um, so no, I mean, I write some dark fantasy bits here and there. And some of my like my last novel is probably folk horror with some fantasy elements, but never just like straight fiction or crime fiction.
Mm. So who are some of your favorite authors, and is there anything special on your to read list this year?
Um, wow, you know what? When I hate when I list my favorite authors, whatever list I give is significant in that because of who I left out. You know what I mean? So as soon as I write somebody, I love Jack Ketchum's work. He's an example of a writer who's not afraid to go there and does it with such skill and empathy that it's not done in a way just to, it's not just blood and guts to make you excited. It's done with a theme and importance. I'm trying to think of what I love Paul Tremblay's works, of course. Let me see some lesser known writers. Samantha Kolsnick's True Crime is a book that just blew me away. If you haven't read that, you have to. And Sam, if you're out there, I miss you. Where you been? I don't see them around as much anymore. I've been reading a lot of Krista Carmen lately. We've become friends. And she's been putting out some amazing Gothic stuff. Let me think who else. I definitely believe you always need to be reading because if you're not reading, you're not making the tools for writing to learn how folks do their own craft. I'm trying to remember the name of the Michigan writer. Why can't I think of her name? But she puts out some great true crime, and I'm forgetting it now. Beware the Woman. It was called Megan Abbott. There we go. Can't believe I forgot that. I love her. Last House on Needless Street is another example. I'm forgetting her name. It's my age.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Those are the kind of novels I love that just blow your mind at the end. Josh Malerman's works, he's been writing stuff since Bird Box that makes you forget Bird Box, at least for me. Incidents in the House, what is it called? But just blew my mind. Really good. So I'm always reading something, usually 3 or 4 things at once, sometimes an arc for someone, sometimes beta reading. And I just hate being bored and I hate being boring. So those are the things that when I read writers, I don't like to be either of those bored. Hopefully that's a good enough answer. I'm going to
Yeah.
redo it.
Yeah, I'll have to look up Megan Abbott if she writes true crime because I'm a big true crime reader.
Okay. Yeah, I
So,
went and saw her. She was at a local Barnes and Noble, and of course, she's this little genius. I don't want to say meek, but she's not like just towering figure. But she writes these larger than life books, and her roots are in horror, even though like she loves horror, but her works are more true crime. So, or just crime. Anyways,
tell us about some of the other books you've written.
um, I got some right here. Um, First of all, here was the arc for Callie's Web that I made my own little arc and sent it out. Um, so this is not the final cover. Um, Here's my latest book, To Those Willing to Drown. This came out just in March. It's the folk horror book. It's been getting a great reception. It's based on a true setting of where I grew up in summers for 30 years, called Torch Lake, deepest lake in inland Michigan. It's cold, deep, water is crystal clear. A lot of legends about the lake that I sort of created. Some I tapped into about when you sprinkle ashes into the lake and then you go there at night and shine a candle or a flame. The spirit of the deceased comes to say hi to you, and um, so that's that. And then I mentioned some of the addiction horror anthologies. Here's one of them, Orphans of Bliss, but there's a few other ones, Lullabies for Suffering, um, and Garden of Fiends. Lastly, this one is also about a true setting, Hobgoblins of Little Minds. It's about Michigan had an abandoned psychiatric facility nearby here, and people used to sneak in there and run around in the underground tunnels. It was a huge compound. So the novel's about a experiments on bipolar humans, and that turned them into basically werewolves, even though the word werewolf's never used. But that was pretty cool. So yeah, that's a few of them. But Callie's Web is the new and exciting one, and it's the easiest. If you want to get a snippet of how I write, it's 104 pages, and I think it's a good example of where I usually go with my fiction.
Yeah, definitely. So, what's your next project? What can readers expect from you in the future?
Well, man, I went like a year and a half without publishing anything, and now I have two things within like 3 or 4 months of each other. So that means I've been doing a lot of promoting of those two. I have a start of a sequel to Those Willing to Drown. I can't say that'll ever get anywhere. So that is one thing I want to do. Hey, Crystal Lake, if you're listening, I want to do an anthology of works, speculative works inspired by Florence and the Machine. And me and Katrina Monroe have been trying to find a publisher, just because I'm infatuated with music and what it means, and to have fiction inspired by music. And is something I would love to do. And I've talked to a lot of writers, and they all went in. I just need to find some publisher to back me. So that's one thing I'd love to do. So yeah, those are some projects just in my head, and you know how it goes. I have probably 5 started novels on my hard drive, and we'll see which one finishes. You got to finish your stuff to really be a writer. So
Yeah, I know how that feels. I have several projects in various
yeah,
stages of being written. So yeah.
yeah, and some will die a slow death and the hard drive dust, and others I'll tap into and get manically obsessed over. So
Okay, so I think we'll wrap the interview up here. Thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
great, thank you, Anita.
Okay, and that's it for this episode. And bye for now, everyone.